Chapter 11. The next day, Isika jumped up as soon as her eyes flew open. Sun streamed through the open doorway and windows of the small cottage. She felt incredible. She stretched out her arms and legs, staring at them as though they belonged to someone else. She had so much energy, she thought she could spring out the door and straight into the sky. She looked around the cottage. There was no sign of Jabari or Gavi in the little room, but Ben and Iba were fast asleep under their blankets. Their host was baking something over the fire, and the baby lay watching Isika from a blanket beside his mother. "Good morning," Isika said, crossing the room to stand beside the woman. The woman looked up from the dough she was rolling. "Good morning," she said. "Did you sleep well?" "I did," Isika told her. The woman's eyes were brighter than they had been the day before. She hummed a song as she made the bread. The baby cooed from his blanket, and Isika held her arms out to him. "Can I hold him?" she asked. "Of course," the woman said, smiling at Isika. She looked directly into Isika's eyes the way Jabari and Gavi did. It still felt strange and exhilarating all at once. Isika brought the baby's little head to her face and breathed in his smell. He reminded her of Kital as a baby, with his nut-brown skin and tiny, grasping hands. When she thought of Kital, her heart gave a pang, and once again it was sharp like a blade. It was as sharp as the energy Isika felt, as strong as the joy she felt at the beauty of the sunny morning. All of her senses were heightened, and all at once her need to see Kital became unbearable. She gave the baby a kiss on his lovely head, then carefully placed him back on the blanket. He watched her with serious eyes as she turned to find the others. "Time to go," she said. Her voice was loud, and Benyam and Iba sat up and looked at her sleepily. "Wake up, you two," she said. "We need to get moving." Outside, Gavi was packing the kitchen bag with food, and Jabari was looking over his arrows, checking each shaft and settling them back in the quiver he usually wore slung over his shoulder. "You're finally up," Gavi said, smiling. "Well, how long have you two been up?" Isika asked, annoyed. "Since the moon was still in the sky," Jabari said. Isika crossed her arms and frowned at him. He smiled in response, inspecting another arrow carefully before putting it in the quiver. "Do you ever use that?" Isika asked, distracted by the soft clink of the arrow settling with the others. "When I need to hunt," he said. He nodded toward Gavi. "It's rare when we're seeking, because people feed us, especially if we rid their houses of poison. Our kind host here has given us enough food for 2 more days." "Well," Gavi said, "maybe one with the way these 3 eat." Jabari laughed. Isika narrowed her eyes. "Are you ready to go?" she asked. "I'm worried about my baby brother. He's probably terrified." "Oh, we're ready," Jabari said. "We were waiting for you, sleepyheads." He grinned and Gavi laughed as Isika reached out without thinking and pushed Jabari, who nearly toppled over and fell off the porch. For a moment, Isika stood frozen, shocked at herself. What an intrusion on his person, and he was her elder. Then the sound of Gavi's laughter reached her, and Isika couldn't help joining in when she saw the look on Jabari's face as he regained his balance. She was startled by the pleasure that spread through her. She was becoming a new person, someone who was strong, someone who laughed loudly and pushed boys who teased her. One thing was sure, she was never going to be able to return to life as a worker. They left the house with their hands full of biscuits to eat while they walked. The warm biscuits were made of toasted grain, honey, and cinnamon. They smelled glorious and tasted better, melting in Isika's mouth. She was still adjusting to eating so many times a day, but the taste of the food in this land, the idea that food could be plentiful and taste so good, was new to her. She could get used to it. She was trying to find the courage to demand the answers she wanted from Jabari, but she didn't have to, because he came to her first. He fell into step beside her. "I think you and I should walk together today," he said. "I can see you have burning questions for me. They look like they'll shoot out of your skull if you don't ask them soon, and I, for one, don't want any people explosions on this journey." Heat rushed into Isika's face. It annoyed her that Jabari could read her like that. But he was right, and this morning was so different. First, she felt as though she could run all day, and second, her thoughts were ordered in nice rows in her brain. Instead of having a tangle of unknowing in her mind, she knew the questions she wanted to ask, and even the order to ask them. It would be stupid not to take him up on his offer. Behind them, Gavi walked with Benayim and Iba on either side of him, 3 abreast on the wide path. Iba skipped and waved her arms on every other step, while Ben had a grin on his face from something Gavi had said. Honestly, Isika barely recognized her family. They were far from the overworked, hungry, grief-stricken people they had been 2 days ago. The Othra had rejoined them. The huge birds flew overhead, landing in branches, singing to one another, then launching out of the trees in a storm of leaves and feathers. It seemed they could barely stay still. The leader, the one called Nero, was the largest of the birds, over half as tall as Isika, and he had the most colors glimmering in his black feathers. The one called Ephir was smaller than Nero, and when sunlight hit her at a certain angle, she was mainly red and purple, though she still looked black in regular daylight. Isika had never heard the third speak. She seemed older somehow, with shades of deep blue glittering from her black feathers as she flew. Of the 3, she sang the most, lighting on branches just before the travelers, trilling open notes into the forest. "Who were they?" Isika asked, pointing at the birds. It wasn't necessarily the most important of her many questions, but she had to start somewhere, and she knew this was the right place. "The Othra?" Jabari asked. When she looked up at him, he was staring back at her, his face surprised. "You've never seen them before?" Isika had to smile. "Of course not. Did you think we had Othra in the worker village? You have to understand, I've never seen any of this. Not the plants, not the blue sea we can swim in, not the sacred walls being torn down like paper." She felt defensive suddenly and scowled. "You're going to have to explain it all." Jabari looked thoughtful. "I'm sorry. I see now. It's just that I've grown up with the Othra. I can't remember ever not knowing them. They are ancient and special. They're guardians of a sort. Caretakers of all that we are charged to protect and heal. The big one is Nero. I think he's been around for centuries. His mate is Ephir. Ephir's mother, Emia, is even older." He frowned, his voice trailing off as he watched Emia trilling a song from a high branch. "They don't usually spend this much time with us. They often watch from afar, but—" "What?" He shook his head, a frown on his face, and he was lost in his thoughts for a moment. "Sometimes they come when we need extra help, or when something important is happening. I've never seen them behave this way. I'm not sure if you saw, but they pretty much commanded me to take you to the city." "Oh, you didn't want to?" She felt her shoulders stiffen. He laughed. "Don't be so prickly. I just had never encountered a situation like you in my whole life. I didn't know what to do. It helped to have their approval. If nothing else, I can blame them if the elders are angry." Isika bit her lip. He was right. She was being prickly. "Not used to thinking on your feet?" she asked, stealing a glance at him and trying to relax her shoulders. Jabari's mouth dropped open. "Are you teasing me, Isika? You do have a sense of humor. I wondered if you even knew what a joke was." She smiled and changed the subject. "Are there more Uthra? And why do I feel the way I do? Stronger every day. Do you know?" "There are others, yes. but not many of them take notice of us. They stay in their mountains and do whatever it is that they do. These three have always been part of life in the city. And as for your other question, he trailed off, lost in thought again. Isika watched his face until she tripped over a tree root, making up her mind to pay more attention to her feet. It was a while before Jabari spoke again. "Well, it's to be expected," he said. "The same thing happens to the rescued ones. The poison is washing out of your body, and as it does, you begin to feel better. I'm a little confused because it usually takes a lot longer for the poison to leave. You've been out of the worker village 2 days?" Isika felt as though they had been away a month, but as she thought it through, she realized he was right. Yesterday they had met Gavi and Jabari in the morning. The day before they had rode after Kital. Yes, it had been 2 days. She nodded slowly. "What do you mean by poison? Why do you use that word so often?" "The poison is from the Great Waste. Demon magic trying to destroy the world. It appears in many ways, but one way is in the growth of the walls. The poison is so strong that those within the walls can't see that they are poisonous. They keep others outside of their walls more and more until the walls form their identity." He glanced at her. "Some even believe the walls are sacred." Isika blinked at him. He had just described their way of life and named it poison, demon magic. His face was full of pity. He looked away, tilting his head. She really looked at him, noting how straight he stood when he walked, his wide shoulders, the sweep of his jaw up to his ear. She frowned and looked back at the ground. She didn't want to stumble again. "We need each other, Isika," he said gently. "Mugunta, the Great Waste, wants us to die separately, to be suspicious of each other, to demand money for normal services for one another, to rob us of love. Why do you think your people cast their own children away? It's because of poison." "They cast them away because of the demands of the goddesses," she said slowly. "The goddesses are manifestations of Mugunta, our name for the Great Waste," he said, that anger back in his voice. "They are made of the poison. They are demons. No one should ever cast away something as precious as a child." She shook her head to clear it. "Who is Mugunta? What do you mean, the Great Waste?" "Mugunta is the cause of a baby crying in the night with no one to hear, a man without a home, people who live close to one another with no kindness between them. Mugunta and the Great Waste eat the hearts of people. They feed on fear and suspicion. They hate the Shaper for his beauty. They are disharmony and greed. They are the beginning of evil, those who eat light and spit out blood. And they do it through poison because people rebel against force." Isika was stunned. Jabari paused, then went on. "You honor the walls. Where do they come from?" he asked. They just appear. The walls are gifts from the goddesses, to separate you and keep people out of each other's homes." "Yes, a family's ground is sacred," Isika said, more firmly than she felt. "And who tells you these rules, Isika, that you cannot look at one another or enter one another's houses?" "The priest shows the way." Isika's voice was less certain as she spoke of the things she had always struggled with. "Where does the priest hear about the way?" I don't know." Jabari's voice was gentle. "The rules come from Mugunta. He has 1,000 ways to spin hatred. The lies and tricks that keep people away from one another spill out of the evil that lives in the Great Waste. That evil is poison. And I think most of your rules come from one of Mugunta's most loyal servants, the Desert King." Isika blinked. "Who?" Jabari started to answer, then shook his head. "That's for another time." Isika frowned at him, thinking over her life. Oddly, she wanted to protect the village she had run from, but she also couldn't understand why she had this protective instinct. She looked deeper. Something was prodding at her, making her uncomfortable with condemning the workers as being lost to poison. She saw it then. What she really wanted to protect was her mother's choice to live among the workers. And she wanted to protect people like Jerutha, kind and good people. But being poisoned didn't mean that Jerutha wasn't kind and good, Isika realized as she worked through it. It only meant she was poisoned. Isika thought about how she had trouble learning to avoid eye contact, and how she had always thought people's eyes were so beautiful, even though she wasn't supposed to look into them. She realized that she believed Jabari. She believed that she had been poisoned, and that the Seekers needed to rid the land of poison. She wanted to go back to her village and do it right then. "Why don't you come and tear down the walls of the workers?" she asked. Jabari looked shocked. "We can't do that. We tear down walls that have begun to grow in our own land, not in the lands of others." "But they need you." "Otherwise, it would begin a world of trouble. They would fight us, and there would be war." She thought about that. The workers certainly didn't seem like they wanted help, but that was because they didn't know they were poisoned. Surely if they knew they were being poisoned, they would want people to help them. "Does the poison come quickly?" she asked. "Are you always patrolling?" "We call it seeking. It does come quickly. Moween is large, so we can only visit each place once a year, and we always have walls to tear down." He glanced at her, which she saw because she was looking up at him as he spoke. His eyes were serious, and he considered her for a moment. Isika tried to remember to pay attention to where her feet went. Her pants flapped gently around her legs. She felt her new energy with every step. He went on speaking. "We had a queen once," he said. "The elders say that when she was with us, the poison was so slow that the Mawil could take care of it themselves, and no seekers were needed. But she was stolen, kidnapped over 30 years ago. Ever since, we have to send the seekers to take down the walls. We still look for her." His voice changed. "It's why I became a seeker. I have taken a vow to find her myself." Isika glanced at him, surprised by the passion in his voice. His fists were clenched. "Why was the poison slow when the queen was with your people?" she asked. "It was in my grandparents' time. My father was 10 years old when the queen was taken. You'll have to ask one of the elders when we get to the city." Isika wanted to protest, but when she looked at him, she saw his set face and kept quiet. They walked in silence for some time. The jungle was thick on either side of them, exploding with plants that waved in the slightest breeze, and bursts of sound when small birds sang into the day. "You've mentioned the elders a few times," she said finally. "Who are they?" "They watch over the Mawil. There are many elders, but 4 main people who used to advise the queen. Now they run the land." With a flurry of air and leaves, Nirel swooped down and brushed Jabari on the head with the feathers of one wing. Jabari jumped. "What?" he asked, coming to a halt, because Nirel landed on the ground directly in front of him. "You know, young one," the bird said. "Sing